Good morning. Welcome to the Benefits of Outside Classroom. My name is Crystal Wagner, and I am the pre-K teacher at St. Paul Lutheran School in Hamel, Illinois. I've been there since 2016, but I have been teaching this age group for a long time, 25 years I've been teaching this age group. I got my degree at Southern Illinois University in Edwardsville, and I got my colloquy from Concordia, Chicago. In addition to being a teacher, I'm a wife, a mother, a grandmother. I am an Army veteran, and I am a 4th degree black belt in Taekwondo, which has been amazing preparation for dealing with these little energetic kids. When I first started doing my research on the benefits of learning outside, I was amazed I just Googled benefits of learning outside for children, and all kinds of articles popped up. It was just amazing. I don't think anyone argues the value of spending time outside, but many adults don't realize what the children are missing. Most of us can recollect memories of spending a great deal of time outside. Years ago, this was just a natural and regular part of childhood. But today's children are not as fortunate. Between safety concerns, not enough available outdoor play areas, and asphalt playgrounds, the youngest generation has been robbed of what was once a rite of passage for most children. And many parents do not realize what their child is missing by not experiencing this and spending the majority of their time indoors. One expert from Yale University noted that the typical U.S. child spends about 90% of their time indoors. Kids get only 30 minutes a day of outdoor unstructured play, down from 4 hours a generation ago. And meanwhile, young children between the ages of 2 and 5 spend an average of 30 hours a week with electronic media. Too much time sitting can raise a child's long-term risk of health problems into adulthood, including heart disease, diabetes, sleep apnea, and mental health disorders. At St. Paul Lutheran School, our early childhood program is blessed to have access to a large outside classroom. Each Friday, with the help of my assistant, Mrs. Girth, the pre-K students and the kindergarten students go to a privately owned 60-acre wooded property, which belongs to my in-laws, where they spend at least 2 hours hiking, exploring, studying, and playing while learning about nature. During this time, the students practice math skills, they count various objects, measuring and comparing items found in the woods and fields. They do shapes and colors by collecting different colored shapes and rocks, sticks, depending on the time of year. They'll take plastic bags with them and collect things. We do art projects. We make collages out of things that we find. We make bird feeders to hang up outside, and physical education, most definitely. These small children cover approximately 2 miles up and down hills, over and under trees, going through creeks, all in a hands-on manner that very few children are able to experience. They get to look close up at the designs left in nature. I know this is really huge behind me. I hope I don't scare anybody. There is also a pond where there's wetlands down below. There is a large creek that runs through the entire area, and lots of woods for us to play in. Some of the paths are rocked, and so it's easier for them to walk on, but some of them have been made in the time we've been doing outside classroom. It's been about 4 years now since we've introduced outside classroom. I am the creator of it. Thank you very much. We have an area down below we call Walnut Grove. It's full of walnut trees. They run up and down the hill. You can see them at the top of one of the hills. And it's just amazing. They have so much energy. At the end of hiking, they'll say, "Oh, can we run?" Go ahead. Just let them go. We look at different things. This one is called Find a Leaf That's Bigger Than Your Head. And you can see they're very good at this game. Wildflowers in abundance. And they love to compare the colors, the size, the shapes, and sometimes we let them bring it back to the classroom. Sometimes we do not. They like to hide in some of the wildflowers, blowing the dandelions, which my father-in-law loves, that they're planting even more dandelions now. Sometimes we let them take magnifying glasses, and they can study what they found close up. They think they're real good scientists when we do stuff like that. As well as they'll take a clipboard with a piece of paper with pictures on it. They have to identify different objects, mark it off when they find it, and you can see how they're very into this. Here we are hanging some of the bird feeders that we made. And of course I had to label with their names because every time we go out there, oh, this one, that was my bird feeder, that was my bird. So we had to label all of them. And here we are at the front of outside classroom. That's a picture of them in front of the American flag, but the flag got cut off there with the flagpole. And we're just on one of the paths looking at different items. My father-in-law has a rain gauge out there, and so we check that when we would had a lot of rain. We compare different flowers, and they also know that they need to count the rings on a tree to tell how old it is. Sometimes we get a little silly with our plastic bags that we take out, but that's all in fun too. We cross two areas where we cross the creek, and there is a cement road for them. My father-in-law will drive across it sometimes, but I always have to go out. If we've had a lot of rain, they know if it goes up to the top of my boots, it is too deep for them. And I'm checking the water there. And mushrooms, they go crazy for mushrooms. Every time they find them, they're always hollering, Mrs. Girth, Mrs. Wagner, come over and look at what I found. And they get to pick them, they can touch them, they can squeeze them, they get whatever. They get to play with it. They like to find mushrooms in different places. Here we found one inside of a tree, and these shelf mushrooms that grow on the side, they like to identify those as well. And you can just see how excited they are when they do this sort of thing. It is so much fun watching my students get so excited over things that I took for granted when I was a child. I have seen my students become so enamored by seeing frozen creeks and being able to break the ice, pick it up, look at what's frozen inside, throw it on the ground, watch it break, and not be told, stop making a mess. Their natural curiosity is satisfied because they are not under the constraints of the structured classroom. We go every Friday, unless it is pouring down rain or it's dangerously cold. Otherwise, if it's snowing, we go. If it's wet, we go. We go out every time, and they never complain about this. Here we have a little girl walking on the ice and holding up some of the pieces of ice. And they also learn the hard way, even though I always tell them, the ice is slippery, don't run. We always have someone fall, crack the ice, and they all think that's funny. Here they're holding up some of the, and you can see the little boy stomping on it. They like to watch that too. Just some more of them. Try to get all of the seasons in here so you could get to see some of it. Here they're walking on the ice again, looking at what's frozen inside. And running up and down the snowy hills. They like that as well. This is down in Walnut Grove. We had a snowball fight down there. We also built snowmen down there. We had a flood, and this is just a huge puddle that frozen over. They wanted to go on it. I had to go first to make sure the ice wouldn't break, and as you can see, it did, and they thought this was hysterically funny when I broke through the ice. Here we're just, the children leave their boots at school. They bring them at the beginning of the year, waterproof boots, but when it gets cold, a lot of the parents will send snow pants or something just to accommodate for the weather, but they really don't care. They never say, I'm too cold, I got wet. They just love it out there so much. And here they're riding in the snow, and I love the picture of the little boy just throwing the snow up in the air because it's just the joy of being out there. In my 25 years of teaching, learning and childhood experiences have changed a great deal, and I am still fascinated to experience nature through the eyes of these children. And I marvel at the excitement from children who some have never waded in a creek, have never hiked through the woods, or observed wild animals in their natural habitat. Here they get to go down in the creek, and they learn about trees having roots, but very few get to crawl underneath the tree and look at the roots from that angle. We also have a duck blind out there, and they thought that was just amazing that they could go in there, and little girls seeing their breath while they're in there. And we always find something new. You would think going out every week it would get to be boring for them, but it's not. We always find something new, and there's a new discovery. They like to climb on the dirt mounds, and you can see where some of the logs have been cut. There's just some more pictures of them. As a teacher, I have learned that I make assumptions about what young children understand and can make connections. They make connections through things in nature. And an example of this happened during the Lenten season. During Bible study time, I had been telling the students about Jesus being beaten, having a robe placed on him, and a crown of thorns on his head. And when I asked them to recount these events, they could say it right back to me. They knew. But one time at outside classroom, we were walking down a path, and there were thorns protruding out. And so I told the children, be careful, there's thorns, I don't want you to get cut or scratched. And one little boy stopped in his tracks and said, thorns? These are thorns? Is this what was on Jesus' head? And it was then that I learned my students, even though they could repeat what I said, they didn't necessarily understand the reference I was making. And there was a teachable moment on that path as the children looked at the thorns, touched them lightly with their finger, and drew their own conclusions of how much that must have hurt, having a crown of thorns on the head. And it's humbling to have these children ask these simple questions of me. I learn at Outside Classroom too. Here they're studying some of they really love those magnifying glasses. They also learn that if they stray from the path, they will end up in the high weeds, but they think that's fun too. And sometimes we find different kinds of plants that they'll ask me, what kind of plant is that? And if I don't know it, then I gotta go look it up. Unless I have missionary children who've been to Asia, and then they go, oh, that's bamboo. I saw that in Taiwan, so they have to fill me in on it. They learn that if we don't have any rain, the creek runs dry, and a dry creek bed is not nearly as much fun as one with water in it. My mother-in-law grows a huge garden, and she allows the children to come out there and pick stuff if it's ripe and just look at the different plants. And they also learn, the other picture, that not everything is as it seems. That's my father-in-law in the background, and he said, don't let the children climb on that. It's not a dirt pile, it's horse manure. So I had to tell the children, you can't climb on that, it's horse manure, which of course prompted the question, what's manure? So any of you that have dealt with small children, you know as soon as you say poop, you're done. they just break into hysterical laughter, and there's the end of the lesson. I have witnessed the young children's imaginations come alive while at Outside Classroom. A fallen tree that curves upward has become a ship for them to sail on. Mounds of dirt or mulch have become fortresses that need protection from dragons, and finding different shaped colors and rocks in the creek become treasure hunts. These are all things that I, as the teacher, do not suggest. The students see this for themselves, and they find it with their own inquiring eyes. Many schools are starting to, what they call go green, have a green classroom, and have discovered for themselves that another benefit, according to the participants, was the way the green school grounds stimulated children's imaginations, whereas the barren spaces and manufactured play equipment on conventional school grounds supported repetitious patterns of behavior. The nooks and crannies created by the rocks, shrubs, and trees on green school grounds invented explorations and imaginative play. The butterflies, bugs, and worms could become new friends, the hills could become theaters, and the mud and water become magic potions, and so on. There's an area in the woods where there are a lot of large fallen trees, and the children absolutely love it in there. We found it on accident, and my father-in-law didn't even know it was back there, and then I had to make my husband and father-in-law cut a path back there so we could go climb. And they're low enough to the ground that the children can climb without fear of falling 30 feet and breaking an arm or something like that. But after playing on these trees, well, one of my children said, "This is the best playground ever." And I had to agree with that. And there's your boy, Jessica. He's flying, in case you didn't know. And the teachers like to play in the logs and get on the trees too. There's Mrs. Girth and myself playing in the trees. This is our tree ship. Now, this was our first year at Outside Classroom. I didn't see it. The children said, "Oh, that looks like a ship." And you can look at it, you can see that. And every time we got to this part of Outside Classroom, they wanted to go get on their ship. They wanted to climb on it and play on it. And one day we came out there and it was gone. My father-in-law heats his house with a wood burner. And here's the culprit right here. And they were all very distressed and very upset, and so we had to go up and have a little talk with Grandpa Wagner about cutting up the trees. Another fun item is to run on all the mulch piles he has out there. And this really is fun. I've run on them myself. You fall down, you don't get hurt. It is fun. And they will get up on it and just run and come around and do it again and again and again. And one day we came out there and it was flat. And they filled in where the ground was very, very wet. And again, here's our culprit. So here they are pretending to be birds in a nest. There's also old pieces of concrete from a building that was there many, many years before my in-laws bought the property, and that is their throne, and you can see there's even a stump that's the footstool. Okay. They're big hams when they know I'm taking pictures. Did this change? It sounded different to me. Can you still hear me? Yeah. Shout. And this one is for Janet Muth. This little boy found a big piece of bark, picked up a stick, and he is playing his violin. Now, some of the games are planned out ahead of time. Nothing wrong with a good old-fashioned leaf fight when we're on the letter L and it's fall time. There we are having a leaf fight with the children. We have written the names on small pumpkins, and I'll go out and hide them. The children have to find the pumpkin with their name on it, and they enjoy doing that very much. We collect rocks, take them back to the classroom, paint them. I'll take them out and hide them. The children have to find them. They enjoyed that game. I hid colorful gems all over the place, and this was our math lesson. They had to count how many gems they had found, divide them into categories by color, and compare how many, which number was the greatest of which color. I've hidden plastic lizards out there that my father-in-law will find later when he's mowing the grass and say, "Is this yours?" You know, yeah, it's mine. And this is our favorite thing. This is the tree game. We came upon this game by accident. We had extra time, and so I just told the children, this is down in the Walnut Grove. I said, grab a tree, one child per tree. I blew my whistle and I counted. And they had to run to a different tree before I was finished counting. And I'll count less and less and less. They love it. And we can't have an outside classroom day and walk down here without them saying, "Can we play the tree game?" And it's hard whenever the ground is really muddy because I'm afraid somebody's gonna fall, it's splat, but so far that hasn't happened. And there is often a lot of activity that goes on at my in-laws' property that's not necessarily related to nature. When the tree service came out, they had to go up. They said, "What are those guys doing?" I said, "Well, let's go ask." So we had to go ask them. They talked to the children about what they were doing. The electric company was cutting down branches. They had a helicopter with a huge saw and were cutting the branches of the trees off the wires. And they asked my father-in-law if they could land on his property to refuel. And so my kids got to watch them land, got to watch them take off again. My father-in-law allows the fire department to come out and burn off the fields, not while the kids are there, but they get to see the result of that. So the fire department gets to practice, my father-in-law gets his fields burned off, and they get to learn about helping their neighbor when it comes to that sort of thing. And there is a pipeline, several pipelines that go through my father-in-law's property. And they need permission to get on my father-in-law's property. And he's always striking deals with them about getting a new road and stuff like that. But one of his conditions is these children, or his children, as he calls them, have to be able to come up, touch the equipment, and ask questions. And so they got to watch them put the pipes in. They got to see the big hole that was dug, and they really marveled at the steps, how they dug them so that they made a stairway to get up and down in the hole. They found out if you shout into the end of one pipe, it echoes really loudly, and I thought I was never going to get them away from this. But they learned the unfortunate fact that machinery tears up nature, and they were very distressed when they saw this. They said, what happened? What happened? And that's just what happens. Sometimes friends are out there fishing and they're willing to stop and talk to the children, especially if they caught a fish. That's not a very big one, but he still wanted to talk about it. When they bale hay, they came out and were moving them all up to the top. The children got to watch how that was done. And of course, then they got to play in the hay bales, which is a lot of fun. Here's just some pictures of them. This is another thing. I didn't think I was going to get them away from this. But this also, before they gathered them up, we played a game of, like the tree game, running from one hay bale to the next. And that was a farther stretch for them to run, but they were really wore out by the time we got back home. Studies show that children's behavior is much better when they spend time outside. They are more agreeable and kinder to one another. I have witnessed this among my students, as they are quick to put out a hand to steady another student who may have difficulty crossing the creek or uneven ground. They tell each other to be careful and point out their discoveries to one another. Schools that have gone green, as they call it, have noticed positive benefits. Participants provided numerous examples of how the green school ground encouraged children to be more well-mannered, tolerant, and polite with each other during recess and lunch hour. They noted there was less fighting, more sharing of toys, and more kindness. In the words of one principal, the students were generally having more fun and being nicer to each other. This particular situation stood in stark contrast to that which existed prior to the greening initiative at the school, as described by one of the teachers. Before the greening project, we were having major troubles in the schoolyard at recess. Kids were not happy, they were discontent, running around doing nothing with no focus. Most of our yard was asphalt or terribly hard-packed ground. We did not have a soccer field. We did have a soccer field, but then they fought about who was going to play on the soccer field. There was always a fight at recess. And generally, the positive influence of green school grounds on social interactions extended beyond recess and lunchtime. Many principals and teachers commented that students were more cooperative and communicative when they were having formal class on the school grounds as well. They indicated that students were able to work in small groups more effectively, and they had more patience for their tasks. They also noted that students who normally found it difficult to interact with other students were able to work better with others when learning outdoors. My students also have the blessing and obligation to help their neighbor while outside. Our outside classroom is located at my in-laws' property, as I said, and my in-laws do a good job of keeping their property, the upkeep of their property, but they are getting older and it's more difficult for them. My students will pick up sticks that litter the yard, so my father-in-law has an easier time mowing the grass. And as I said, my in-laws also heat their house with a wood-burning stove, and the students will move firewood closer to the wood-burning stove so my father-in-law doesn't have to go as far to load it. And here they are picking up some sticks. And they don't even realize that they're working. They just are having a really good time out there. And here we're loading some wood. There they are on the log pile. And as a reward for moving the wood, my father-in-law showed them how his log splitter worked. I could have left and they wouldn't have even known it. They were just staring at this the whole time. And there's his wood burner. He showed them how he loads his wood burner too. The benefits of learning while outside are endless. Young children learn best through the physical experiences, and they have ample opportunity for this learning while being outside. And this is especially true of classical learning. The students are in the grammar stage when they're being taught about and asking questions about the outside environment. They're in the logic or dialectic stage when they understand the how and why of outside experiences. And these young students even enter the rhetoric stage when they can explain to others what they have experienced. Without cracking a textbook, my young students know that if the cold wind is blowing, all they have to do is go down into the creek bed or deeper into the woods where they can't feel the wind and it's approximately 10 degrees warmer. They know that snow lasts longer in the shade than in the sun. This blew their minds when they came out there and saw there was snow, and then they saw the line and there was no snow. And you can see they took turns, girls and boys, being in the snow and being out in the sunshine. And so this was our science experience there about how, why is the snow lasting this much longer? The students know that if they walk quietly, they can see turtles in the wetlands sunning themselves while sitting on the creeks, on the logs, and they know that if they get lost, following a creek is the way out of the woods. The students know if the wild grass is flat, there was more than likely a deer or two lying there earlier. They're able to identify deer, dog, coyote, raccoon footprints, as well as know the difference between a rabbit hole or a snake or crawdad hole. Some of the tracks we have seen. They develop both fine and gross motor skills and can learn by trial and error, all while in a safe environment. They also know that these purple poles mark the property line and that they do not cross those lines. They know that they don't have to be afraid if they see an insect. Some more of the bugs we saw. My father-in-law was also a beekeeper, so there are beehives out there, and they know if they're wrapped during the cold weather, the bees are dormant, they don't have to be afraid. But when warm weather's there and the bees are active, they need to walk quietly, not run. And they even know that bees are attracted to black, so they know not to wear that color if the bees are active at that time. They know they don't have to be afraid of the turtles we might find. That's my adult daughter's hand on that turtle. That's how big that turtle was. They don't have to be afraid of the snakes, and we do find them out there. And I don't know how many of you know Pastor Ball. That is Mrs. Serena Ball holding that snake skin up for the kids. That's hanging in my classroom right now too. But they can learn and observe from a distance while not being harmed and at the same time not causing harm to any living creature. There's some more snakes we found. This puddle had 1 million tadpoles in it, and they had a great deal of fun trying to catch them. They did actually catch some, and they know that we talked about tadpoles growing up turning into frogs. There are bluebird houses all over the place. I didn't let the kids look that closely at the eggs. I just took the picture, but you can see there's a butterfly on Mrs. Gerth's hand, and the kids get to see that kind of thing. This one little girl is searching for shiny rocks in the creek, and the other ones are watching the minnows that are in the creek right now. This was nice. We saw this from the top of the hill, and I said, "Be quiet, there's geese down there." They were so quiet walking down the hill and shushing each other, and they got down there and found out they were decoys. But it was a nice walk down the hill, and so then they got to look up close at the geese. This is right by the duck blind they were in earlier. But we do have real animals out there. There's some ducks up by the house, and each year families of geese will come lay eggs. They get to see the goslings when they hatch out swimming around. But they also know if they're loud when the geese are there, the geese will fly away. They know that the snake skins, the snail shells, and the bones they find once belonged to a living creature, and they can speculate what might have happened to that animal. We found a live crawdad, and we found a partially eaten crawdad. And they were fascinated with that too and tried to figure out what might have happened to that crawdad. And then we had to talk about what kind of animals would eat a crawdad. And we have found numerous turtles and tortoises out there. These are some of our prized possessions back at the classroom. Our snakeskin, antlers, and that is one of the shelf mushrooms that grows out of the side of the tree. For those of you who know Pastor Ben Ball, he's an avid hunter, and he loves it when we bring stuff in there. These are deer bones we found, and he was more than happy to talk to the kids about what part of the deer these belong to. They know that if their hands get dirty, they can wash them off in the creek, and they know if they step in the water that's too deep, they have to dump their boot back out. Yet they never complain about it. This child did not want to go back. I've even had a child fall they were walking on top of the ice in the creek, and they fell, hit it, and went through. And it was cold. And she was crying, but she wasn't crying because she fell. She was crying because that meant we had to go back to school. So, in recent years, there has been a cultural shift in our society that has reduced the access and use of outdoors for many young children. Contributory factors include increased fear among adults in relation to children's safety and technological advances leading to an overwhelming prominence of more sedentary indoor activities such as television, video games, and computer games. And I have seen this in my years of teaching preschool. I have children that come in that do not know how to hold a crayon. They can do this, but they cannot, the fine motor skills, they just aren't there. These are some arguments for taking the children outside. Learning outside the classroom supports the development of healthy and active lifestyles by offering children opportunities for physical activity, which they are lacking greatly, freedom of movement, and promoting a sense of well-being. Learning outside the classroom gives children contact with the natural world and offers them experiences that are unique to outdoors, such as direct contact with the weather and the seasons. Playing and learning outside also helps children to understand and respect nature, the environment, and the interdependence of humans, animals, plants, and life cycles. Outdoor play also supports children's problem-solving skills and nurtures their creativity, as well as providing rich opportunities for their developing imaginations, inventiveness, and resourcefulness. Children need an outdoor environment that can provide them with space, both upwards and outwards, and places to explore, experiment, discover, and be active and healthy, and to develop their physical capabilities. The outdoor environment offers space and therefore is particularly important to those children who learn best through active movement. Very young children learn predominantly through their sensory and physical experiences, which supports brain development and the creation of the neural networks. And for many children, playing outdoors at their early years setting may be the only opportunity they have to play safely and freely while they learn to assess, risk, and develop the skills to manage the new situations. Studies show the main problem for students being able to learn out of the doors is access and having a place to go. And I understand not everyone has access to a large area for an outside classroom. But many of these examples can be experienced by going to state parks or local parks, hiking trails, or even asking a member of your congregation who may have property if they would mind if you bring the children out there occasionally. You're not going to know unless you ask. I am forever grateful to my in-laws, Marlon and Patricia Wagner, for making it possible for my students to have such a valuable experience. My outdoor classroom has been just as beneficial for my in-laws, who are now known as Grandpa and Grandma Wagner to all of the students who have participated in this program. When I first approached my father-in-law with this idea, he said, "Are you going to stay with him?" I considered leaving a few times, but my in-laws look forward to outside classroom days. They enjoy interacting with the young children and hearing about their adventures and what they have found at the end of our day. And here they are. They gave her a present. All their names are on the back. They love telling my mother-in-law when they've seen a snake because she is afraid of snakes. So that's the first thing. "Grandma, we found a snake." They're giving Grandpa a flower. Oh, and my father-in-law had to call. We were ready to leave. My father-in-law says, "Oh, boys, come here. Here's a groundhog hole." So then I had to wait until he was done explaining about the groundhog hole. And here they come out. They've already said to me at least 3 times since summer started, "I miss the kids." So I might have to look into a summer camp for taking the kids out there. I don't know. When it's cold, they will open up their house or their garage. We're having hot chocolate in there with Grandpa Wagner. And we have, in this time, the 4 years we've been doing this, he's been cutting down, for the man that was unsure about this, "Oh, I could cut a path there on the bluff and make it easier for the kids." So that's my husband and my father-in-law cutting a new path for the children to use. When it's hot, we'll sit out and have popsicles. And we've even had picnics at the end of the year. My students love nature. Here's all my tree huggers. They know this is the best place to find treasures. There's wild turkey out there too, and they always are finding that all kinds of feathers. There's a 4-leaf clover, and that's Mrs. Ball again showing them how to get nectar out of a clover. They also know it is the home of some of the biggest 4-leaf clovers you would ever hope to find. There's even a 5-leaf clover in there. The only complaint I hear from my students is when I say it's time to go back to school. I know, but when they're tired, they just want to lay on the grass. So there they are by the pond, just kind of chilling out. I know that their outside classroom experience is something they will remember all of their lives. And they're down in Walnut Grove, their favorite place. And they all dressed as butterflies one day too. I know that many teachers have various works of art displayed in their classrooms, and I believe it's important for children to be exposed to and familiar with these beautiful works of man-made art. But my students have the unique privilege of experiencing the beauty of the art created by our Maker in an up-close and personal way. And we can ask them, "What's beautiful about this?" And they can tell you. They can even find beauty in what a bug or worm will do to a piece of wood. There's Walnut Grove with no children in it. And this is far better than the greatest man-made masterpiece. Thank you. I believe I have time for questions. I can keep talking. But does anyone have any questions? Yes?
How far away is the property from the school, and what do you do for transportation?
They are located 8 miles from our school, and we have a school van that we load the children up and we take them out there and back. And right now it's only pre-K and kindergarten, but Mr. Girth and I have talked about taking the older children out there as well. It's just, since this is privately owned property and it belongs to, my father-in-law would like to have a family member out there, and I'm not able to be there all the time, so, but we're gonna work on that, see if I can take some of the older kids out there as well. So, if you like this, how this property looks, we are looking for a first and second grade teacher. You could come out and go to outside classroom with me. Are there any other questions?
Yes, how much of the outdoor time do you lead versus kind of letting the kids?
It depends. If we're talking about something specific, like if we're talking about the season of fall, then I will want them to find 5 different color leaves or different shapes, and so that we can compare them. But usually the lesson presents itself, because they find something and then they want it explained, and then somebody else wants to find it, and it's just, like I said, they teach me more than I teach them. Just the joy these children have of being out there and still wanting to go, and it's a good incentive for them as well, because they know this is a privilege, not a right. Not everybody gets to go to outside classroom, but they like it so much. I rarely have problems with children, especially when they're out there. So this was especially beneficial this past year during COVID, because we could go out there still. We could social distance. We were outside. And I had already talked to my father-in-law and said, if we have to shut down again, I want to bring tables out here, and we're going to do every day. And he said, that's fine with me. So that was our plan. That was our backup plan if we would have to shut down again. Fortunately, we did not have to, but that's also, it's my children, they didn't get sick that often, but they were outside all the time, and they weren't, I'm tired. I never heard that from the little kids. Maybe at the beginning of the year, and we had to teach them that there was a lot more strict rules at the very beginning, like don't run off where I can't see you, don't climb up in a tree, or different things like that. They had to learn about the property line. But for the most part, they're very, very good when we're out there. They do ask why I wear a whistle, and that's because I don't want to lose my voice by the end of the day, because I can see them a long, long distance, but they have different names for the different areas where we go, and they know where that is. If I say, oh, we're going to the wetlands, they know exactly where they're going, and we're going up on the bluff, they know exactly where that is. They know not to get too close to the edge of the creek whenever it's the bank is up high, because they could fall in, and of course I tell them, if you fall in, I'm leaving you there. I'm not climbing down, and so I would get them, but you know. So, yes?
What state is that?
Illinois. Yes?
When you meet with your parents at the beginning of the year, do you explain this as part of your curriculum?
Yes, and the parents do sign a waiver to come with us. To protect my in-laws. We haven't had any serious accidents out there, but you never know what's going to happen. So I do have the parents sign a waiver saying that they understand that my in-laws are not to be held responsible for what may or may not happen out there. But this actually has put some of the parents that have been on the fence about whether or not to send their child to our school, this has convinced them to come to our school, because they want their children to have this experience as well. Because with pre-K, you're just beginning school, you don't really sure what you're looking for. If this is their first experience with starting their child in a school, this has been a huge hit for them. I thought I saw a hand. Yes?
I might have missed you saying it earlier, but how many hours do you go in one day, like each Friday? And do you guys get early out on Fridays?
We have, my pre-K class is only half day. So we have chapel every day. Right after chapel, we go over to the classroom, change into our boots. Everyone uses the bathroom. And so far, we haven't had any bathroom accidents either. Now, my mother-in-law said, well, if somebody has to go, I'll let them in. But I don't want to start that, because then they're going to want to be going into grandma's house every time. And so they all do that, and then we come back by our classroom, the end of our classroom day, but then I also come and get the kindergarten in the afternoon. So I'm hiking about 5 miles with these little kids. And so when they start complaining, oh, I'm tired, I said, this is my second time out here. I don't care if you're tired. But still, they'll say that if they're hot, they want to go up to the house and get a snack. My mother-in-law tends to spoil them. And, oh, we could make cookies, we could do that. No, that's not what this is about.
But it's about 2 hours.
It's about 2 hours, yeah, maybe a little bit longer. The day the helicopters came out, we were pushing it because we were waiting for the helicopter to land, and we had to watch all of that. But, yeah, and I've had other parents ask to come out along. I have brought some parents out. I try to be careful not to have just random people coming out that my in-laws don't necessarily know. Yes?
How many years have you been doing this?
Outside classroom I've been doing for 4 years. So. Yes?
How do you handle technology when you're out there? And I'm thinking there are apps on a phone that can help you identify things that you don't know that the kids might be curious about, but then again, the idea is to get them away from technology.
Exactly. Actually, I don't look up apps on my phone while I'm out there. 'Cause first of all, I don't want the children to see me doing that, always looking on my phone. Secondly, because as Mr. Girth can attest to, I'm not that good at doing that kind of thing. So, but if it's something we're not sure of, we will take it back to the classroom, or we'll take it back up to the house and see if my father or mother-in-law can identify what the item is. Obviously, if it's not something we can take with us, we will take a picture, and then we find out together what it is. So, good question. Yes?
I just have a comment to share.
Okay.
We can always really tell that the children love to spend time outside. When we're at the school for our normal days, usually our pre-K day ends with physical activity time, playing on the playground, normally outside unless the weather is bad. But even on these outside classroom days, when we're getting back to school to change and get ready to go home, they say, can we go outside? And we usually say, we've been outside all day.
Yeah, they say.
In fact, I got a text from one of my pre-K parents that sent me a picture of her child enjoying outside class. That's what they call it now, outside classroom. Anytime their children are playing outside, they'll text me a picture. Oh, look, they're enjoying outside classroom. So, and they can drive right by my in-laws' property, and they tell their parents, that's where my outside classroom is. My in-laws my father-in-law's a veteran, and he came out for Veterans Day, and like 30 kids, hey, Grandma and Grandpa Wagner. It looks like they have all these, grandchildren. Well, I appreciate your attention, and am I at time? Yeah. So, I am? Okay. Thank you very much.